Good morning, I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. I bet you've been hearing the term monoculture being bandied about quite a bit this past week and are wondering what the hell that even means. Well, I'll run you through what it actually means today, what it's being used to mean and why it's become something Australian politicians like to use to grab our attention. But let's get into what's been happening while you were sleeping. It's Thursday, June 25. Channel 9 personality Karl Stefanovic is leaving the network after he platformed a far-right activist on his new podcast. The host of The Today Show spoke to anti-Islam figure Tommy Robinson. During the interview, he praised Robinson for his tenacity and courage for standing up for what he believes is right. Robinson, who's the founder of the English Defence League movement, has been banned from several social media platforms for violating hate speech rules and has multiple criminal convictions. Nine reportedly held crisis talks with their staff over the interview yesterday, which was then pulled down from all platforms. However, it was brought back on YouTube by Pauline Hanson, who Robinson praises during the conversation. A third case of the deadly strain of bird flu has been confirmed, this time in South Australia. Again, the bird impacted was a migratory seabird, the first to be picked up in SA after two cases were confirmed in Western Australia. Testing is already currently underway on another unwell bird that was found in Quindalup, south of Perth. WA Agriculture Minister Jackie Jarvis says there have so far not been any mass bird deaths recorded after the initial birds were found and tested positive. And so far, the poultry and agriculture sectors across the country remain bird flu free, although they are on high alert now that H5N1 cases have been confirmed. US President Donald Trump says Iran has agreed to nuclear inspections into infinity, but Iran seems to be at a different set of peace talks. The two countries finished their first round of talks in Switzerland, part of the 60 days of negotiations agreed on in the Memorandum of Understanding recently signed by both to start the journey towards a peace deal, with conflicting reports on what exactly has been agreed to. It seems both have come to different conclusions on where they stand on financial incentives for Iran, control of the Strait of Hormuz, UN nuclear inspections, and the framework for ending Israel's parallel war with Lebanon. Despite the mismatch of outcomes, Mr. Trump says the negotiations were going smoothly and that both sides were getting along quite well. A doctor who recently returned from a humanitarian mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo has tested positive for Ebola. They've been placed in isolation while authorities trace their contacts, the local health ministry saying transmission to the broader European population is incredibly low, with Ebola spreading through contact with a person's bodily fluids. The head of the World Health Organization says there's no need to panic and to remember that in the past 50 years there have been less than 50 cases of Ebola detected outside of Africa. The outbreak in the DRC has now infected more than 1,000 people, with 267 people dead, the largest number of confirmed cases in the first month of any previous episode of the disease. YouTube and their parent company Google have decided to settle with a minor who was claiming that their platform caused him mental health harm. The boy, known only as RKC and who's now 16, says he started watching YouTube as an 8-year-old and became addicted. He said it stopped him from sleeping and then pushed him into depression and anxiety. The terms of the settlement are confidential. A Google spokesperson said that the lawsuit had been amicably resolved and that the platform remains focused on building age-appropriate products and parental controls that deliver on that promise. However, the plaintiff's lawyers says that YouTube's decision to resolve the case before having to face a jury speaks for itself. This lawsuit is just one of thousands currently in progress in the US claiming mental health harms from social media platforms, not just from individuals, but from school districts, municipalities and states. The first trial of this sort ended back in March with a woman who claimed she'd become addicted to YouTube and Instagram at a young age, ending her jury trial with Meta and Google having to pay her a combined $6 million US. A new large study has found that taking a 5-minute break every hour to go for a walk is enough to offset the harm sitting down is doing. There are plenty of studies that have shown brief movement between periods of sitting down has positive impacts on our health, but this is the first time the study tested different time slots and how people felt about them. The study followed 1,200 full-time employees, giving them options of 5-minute walks every 30, 60 or 120 minutes for 2 weeks. Analysis of the results shows that all three of those those break times were considered doable and all resulted in a drop in fatigue and mood scores, but those who took the 5 minutes every 30 minutes reported the highest gains. An excessively sedentary lifestyle has been shown to increase the risk of chronic health conditions, poorer mental health, and creates a substantial burden on the healthcare system. That's all for the top stories this morning. If you're keen to hang around, we're getting into the definition of monoculture today, from Pauline Hanson's lips to the Liberal Party leader and beyond, why it's become a political rallying cry. But if you are heading off, thanks for spending your morning with us. Catch you here for the State and Territory Wrap tomorrow. To mono or multi? That has been the question atop the political pile this week after Pauline Hanson made her National Press Club debut last week.
We cannot be a multicultural society. We are a multiracial society, but we must be monocultural.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese didn't want to be drawn on the debate, but still made mention of Australia's proud history of multiculturalism when discussing the Socceroos' upcoming match.
The Socceroos, we see examples of that rich culture, people who are proud of their ethnicity, of who they are, but also who are proud Australians and representing our great nation.
Opposition leader Angus Taylor said he didn't technically want a monoculture, but did kind of agree with Ms Hanson.
No. But I also think we should have a common set of values we all agree on. I mean, we need every Australian to believe in our system of law, to believe in our basic freedoms, to believe in our parliamentary democracy, and people have been coming to this country in recent times who do not believe in those things, and that should not happen.
That's Mr Taylor speaking to Sydney's 2GB. While his deputy, Jane Hume, felt this whole thing was beneath us all, saying she can't believe we've managed to get ourselves into this. But what even is monoculture? Well, its pure definition is an agricultural one. It means to plant just one single crop, a move that is economically great, but ecologically terrible. But what does it mean when you apply it to people? It means that we all agree to abide by the same rules, laws, and expectations of behaviour. Now, if you're feeling a bit confused about that definition because you'd think that we already do that, you're not alone. Japan is considered to be the most monocultural society on the planet. They are mostly ethnically similar and do have seemingly aligned political ideals, but even then, saying they are completely monocultural is a myth, with experts saying monoculturalism is actually fiction. There's always going to be cultural differences even within Japan. It's just not as obvious nor as highlighted as it is here in Australia. Frank Bongiorno is the director of the Vice-Chancellor's Centre of Public Ideas and Donald Horne Professor of History and Public Ideas at the University of Canberra. Frank Bongiorno, welcome to the Solo Bureau.
Thanks, Claire.
Now, I'm just going to hazard a guess from your surname and my surname, being Murphy, that both of us are either immigrants, children of immigrants, or are very close to having immigrants in our family. Would I be correct?
Yes, well, I mean, let's face it, everyone who's not First Nations is going to be either an immigrant or a descendant of immigrants in this country. And yes, I'm one of those. My parents were born in Australia, but my four grandparents were all Italian-born, or more specifically, they were from the Aeolian Islands off the Sicilian coast. And quite a lot of Italians came from the Aeolian Islands to Australia and to other places around the world too. Some went to New York, some went to Buenos Aires and all that sort of thing. But yeah, my grandparents basically arrived roughly between around the late 1890s, around a bit after 1900 and sort of the late 1920s. So they're all sort of migrants from well before the big post-World War II sort of migration program.
Frank, I wanted to get an understanding from you about what monoculturalism is, because I've been researching it, and every definition I can find outside of its agricultural term, which means to plant just one crop, but monoculturalism is that we all follow one set of rules, laws, and expectations of our behaviour. And from what I can tell, that's what we already do here in Australia. And I know Pauline Hanson likes to say, do you want Sharia law? But there is no place anywhere in Australia that currently adheres to Sharia law. And yet we are multicultural. But it seems like at the moment we have to choose between one or the other and they cannot exist at the same time. But from what I can tell, they already do. What is monoculturalism?
I haven't the faintest idea, really. I mean, it's a term she threw about. It did remind me that a Liberal Party figure from the past, in fact, he was immigration minister in the 1960s and later leader, Billy Snedden, had called for monoculture in 1969. And so I went and sort of extracted the quotation. And this is what he said: "I am quite determined we should have a monoculture with everyone living in the same way, understanding each other and sharing the same aspirations. We don't want pluralism." I suspect that's probably close to what Pauline Hanson has in mind. Less diversity and more uniformity in the way that people think and live. But your guess is as good as mine. I mean, multiculturalism has always been about common citizenship. I mean, there's never been any serious construction of multiculturalism in this country, and it's been official policy now really since the late 1970s. There's never been any understanding that says, oh, look, everyone basically gets to do what they like according to their own cultural choices, that they don't have to follow the law, that they don't have a common participation as citizens in the political system. No one has ever really understood multiculturalism in that sort of way. So I think you're right, Claire, that in a sense, what she's calling for, we already have, because multiculturalism has really been about common citizenship.
Why do you think Australia has this thing where we choose a migrant group of the moment and decide that they're enemy number one?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's not an uncommon response, I think, in many countries. Migration, immigration, the arrival of immigrants in significant numbers is often experienced as unsettling by the host population. They can be seen as a threat to economic well-being. They can be seen as a threat to kind of cultural identity. And I think we're seeing all those kinds of responses in Australia and elsewhere at present. So it's a long-standing pattern in that sense. But I guess it's the newcomers who are often also the most conspicuous. I mean, the term that Australians have often used for migrant settlement is the settlement in enclaves. And this has always been seen as kind of a negative thing, the idea of people from a particular ethnic group, a particular migrant community, all settling in a particular place. And the implication has always been, well, if they're going to come here, and we probably prefer they don't come here, they really should just mix in with everyone else. But we know that's not how things actually work in the real world. I mean, I grew up in Melbourne in the 1970s, 80s, in a northern industrial suburb, now very gentrified, of course, Thornbury, but at the time it was a thoroughly working class and ethnic community. And you heard Italian and Greek in the streets. You had shops that would have Italian language, Greek language in the windows. This is sort of what tends to happen with the migrant and settlement experience, because not unnaturally, there are people tend to join other members of their own family, perhaps in some instances, other people from their own town or village. There are support networks that develop in communities and localities. And it's a common, I wouldn't call it a natural experience, but it's a common sort of aspect of the migration experience, that people would settle together in that way. But that, of course, also makes them much more conspicuous and therefore potentially more of a target for suspicion, or at worst, even hostility and violence. But more often, I think, suspicion. And that's certainly been a pattern in Australia as elsewhere. I'm not sure that Australians are any worse than any number of other countries that one might, sort of nominate, but certainly it's a pattern here as elsewhere.
Now that I've been thinking as I've been listening to you talk, and the Prime Minister said something about this week where he said that Australia has always been multicultural because even pre-colonially, First Nations were not monocultural. They all had separate languages and different traditions. So technically this country has always been multicultural. But could you make an argument for, say, the time where Australia exercised the White Australia policy, that was an attempt at monoculturalism?
Up to a point, but it depends a lot on what you sort of understand as culture, because even, White Australia encompassed a fair bit of cultural diversity. I mean, obviously there were the particular nations of the United Kingdom. In those days you're talking to England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, and before the 1920s it was all of Ireland, and look at the cultural diversity there. It's very considerable. And Australia also, long had a kind of cosmopolitan aspect to it. It had communities of Germans in Australia, of Italians in Australia, Chinese from the 1840s, and especially from the gold rush. And they often did evoke very negative responses from white migrants to Australia, but nonetheless, the diversity was there, and the expectation was there that everyone would kind of conform to a particular set of expectations about observing the law, of participating in the political system, and all the rest of it. So, while Australia was certainly an assertion of kind of unity and exclusion and all the rest of it, but even while Australia recognised that there was, it was essentially an umbrella for quite a bit of diversity. And of course, the place of Indigenous people in these visions is always a difficult one. I mean, what's the place of Indigenous people, First Nations people, in a monocultural society? I mean, clearly, we're talking about people who have many nations, many different languages. Are we saying that there's something wrong with the original peoples of this country practicing their own languages? It seems an absurd proposition to me. It may have been a conventional wisdom a couple of generations ago, but I think very few Australians would take the view that there's something wrong with First Nations people speaking their own languages. I mean, quite absurd, I would have thought.
Frank, thank you for helping us try and make sense of all of this. We keep hearing this word bandied about in the headlines, and I guess we just took monoculturalism and multiculturalism as being two ends of the spectrum, but it seems they're not at all. But thank you for trying to explain it all for us.
Thanks, Claire. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You can read Frank's excellent piece on this from The Conversation. The link is in the show notes. But that is it for the Solo Bureau today. Don't forget to join the Substack crew and let me know if you want to pitch a story idea or share your expertise. The database is growing with, I have to say, quite a wild collection of humans. I particularly like it when people not only nominate themselves but their partners too. I do like myself a 2-for-1 deal. Thank you, team. Okay, go on out there. Have yourselves a great day. Catch you tomorrow.